Okay, today is the 26th of July. We continue with the Nidana Samyutta, 12th chapter of Samyutta Nikaya. We are now at 12.37. At Savatthi, the Buddha said, "Monks, this body is not yours, nor does it belong to others. It is all karma, to be seen as generated and fashioned by volition, as something to be felt. Therein, monks, the instructed noble disciple attends carefully and closely to dependent origination itself thus. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. That is, with ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness, etc., such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes cessation of volition. With the cessation of volition, cessation of consciousness, etc., such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering." That's the end of the sutta. So the Buddha said, this body is not yours, nor does it belong to others. This one, in this chapter on dependent origination, it does not explain so much why this body is not yours. But later, in the Khandha Samyutta, when the Buddha talks about the 5 aggregates, then it is explained that we have no control over our body. That's why it's not ours. And here it says it is all karma, to be seen as generated and fashioned by volition, as something to be felt. The translation in the Pali Text Society book is, it should be regarded as brought about by past karma, by plans, by volitions, by feelings. So this body is, here it says, is a result of old karma, and not only that, is also generated and fashioned by volition. Volition, take it to be like the will to live. Here in the Pali Text Society, it says plans also, and even by feelings, according to the PTS. So the instructed noble disciple considers dependent origination. This formula here, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. So you see this formula, it says when something exists, something else comes to exist. When something arises, something else arises. So one thing is a condition, something else. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. So, for example, when ignorance exists, then volition, the will to live, comes to be. With the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of volition. And then, similarly, when ignorance does not exist, then volition does not come to be. With the cessation of ignorance, volition also ceases. So it is not that when something exists, something disappears. It's not. When something exists, something else comes to be. It's not that. So you have to remember this. 12.38 at Savatthi, Buddha said, "Monks, what one intends and what one plans, and whatever one has a tendency towards, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis for us when there is a basis, there is a support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. When there is the production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. If monks, one does not intend and one does not plan, but one still has a tendency towards something, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is established, has come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. So, such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But monks, when one does not intend, and one does not plan, and one does not have a tendency towards anything, no basis exists for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is no basis, there is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is unestablished and does not come to growth, there is no production of future renewed existence. When there is no production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So here the Buddha says there are three things that are nutriments for the maintenance of consciousness. Firstly, what we intend. The Pali word is ceteti, from the word cetana. And what one plans, pakapeti, and whatever one has a tendency towards, anuseti, from the word anusaya, tendency. So these three things supports consciousness. What one intends, what one plans, and what one has a tendency towards. So there are these three things. Then there is a support for the establishing of consciousness, and then consciousness comes to grow. But the second part, if one does not intend and one does not plan, but one still has a tendency towards something, this also becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. So even if you don't have plan, you don't have intention, but you still have a tendency towards something, meaning you still have a craving for something, then consciousness still continues, is maintained. So these three things, what you intend, what you plan, this could be like sometimes when a person is dying, he still has unfulfilled ambitions, still want to do this, still wants to do that. This is very common. Even in the suttas it is stated that even devas, having lifespan of millions of years, after such a long lifespan now, when they are about to die, and then they panic, and then they think, oh, they still haven't done this, they still haven't done that. So this is the first part, what you intend and what you plan. But however, if at the moment of dying you don't have all this planning and intention, yet if you still have a tendency towards something, that means you still haven't let go of craving, then this consciousness is still maintained. So you can see from here, it's not easy to become liberated from this flow of consciousness. And this flow of consciousness creates samsara, creates the world. So that's why one has to be totally cool, totally, like earlier we read, you have to be disenchanted with the world. And then you got to have revulsion for the world. Then you got to have viraga, dispassion towards the world, totally tired of the world. And then only you can become liberated. So for most people, you have not come to that stage for most people. So the first stage is to attain stream entry. If you attain stream entry, then you have entered the path of the holy ones, the Aryans. And then you have a maximum of 7 more lifetimes. And as you go through these 7 more lifetimes, you become more and more disenchanted with the world. And then you slowly become more and more dispassionate towards the world, and one day you will enter Nibbana. 12.41 at Savatthi. Then the householder Anathapindika approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to him, Householder, when 5 fearful animosities have subsided in a noble disciple, and he possesses the 4 factors of stream entry, and he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom the noble method, if he wishes, he could by himself declare of himself, I am one finished with hell, finished with the animal realm, finished with the domain of ghosts, finished with the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the nether world. I am a stream enterer, no longer bound to the nether world, fixed in destiny, with enlightenment as my destination. I stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, if a person has these, he possesses these 3 factors, he should have the confidence to believe that he is a stream enterer, the first stage Arya, first path Arya. And once you have become Arya, then the hell realm is closed for you, the animal realm and the ghost realm. You will never be born into these 3 woeful planes again. You notice here, these 3 realms are the 3 woeful planes of rebirth. Later books, they added one more. They added the Asura. And this Asura is found in the later Mahayana books. Generally in the Mahayana books, and also in the Abhidhamma. So it shows that the Abhidhamma and the Mahayana books were written much later. So here in the earliest suttas, they always talk about 3 realms of these woeful planes. So what are these 3 factors? I'll go into it. What are the 5 fearful animosities that have subsided? Householder, one who destroys life, engenders on account of such behavior fearful animosity pertaining to the present life, and fearful animosity pertaining to the future life, and he experiences mental pain and displeasure. Thus for one who abstains from destroying life, this fearful animosity has subsided. One who takes what is not given, one who engages in sexual misconduct, one who speaks falsely, one who indulges in wine, liquor and intoxicants that are a basis for negligence, engenders on account of such behavior fearful animosity pertaining to the present life and fearful animosity pertaining to the future life, and he experiences mental pain and displeasure. Thus for one who abstains from wine, liquor and intoxicants that are a basis for negligence, this fearful animosity has subsided. These are the 5 fearful animosities that have subsided. So here I start about to explain. These 5 fearful animosities refer to the 5 precepts that Panchasila that we are advised to uphold. Fearful animosity means that if you break the 5 precepts, you give fear to others because you kill, you steal, you commit sexual misconduct, you lie or cheat, and you take intoxicants. So you give fear to others, and also animosity. Animosity meaning hatred. They fear you as well as hate you. For example, if you kill, and then these beings know that you can kill them, they fear you, but at the same time they have a lot of hatred for you. So if there's a chance, they will take revenge on you. So because of that, you will have to suffer mental pain and displeasure either in this life or future life as a result of your killing karma. Similarly, for the breaking the other precepts, second, stealing, third, sexual misconduct, Number 4, speaking falsely. And number 5, indulging in liquor. Now, why indulging in liquor can give you this fearful animosity? Because when you indulge in liquor, you lose control of yourself. What you should not say, you say. What you should not do, you do. So because of that, you can also easily break the other precepts. So you also engender this fearful animosity. So this is the first condition. If you want to be a stream enterer, you got to keep the precepts. And what are the 4 factors of stream entry that he possesses? Here, householder, the noble disciple possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus. The Blessed One is an Arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the Blessed One. He possesses confirmed confidence in the Dhamma thus. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, to be personally experienced by the wise. He possesses confirmed confidence in the Sangha thus. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way. That is, the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. This Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He possesses the virtues dear to the noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unmottled, freeing, praised by the wise, ungrasped, leading to concentration. These are the 4 factors of stream entry that he possesses. So these are the characteristics of stream entry. He has unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, 3 things. And then the 4th is, he has the Arin Sila. Arin Sila, sometimes it is called perfect Sila, perfect moral conduct. Actually comprises 3 factors in the Noble Eightfold Path. In the Noble Eightfold Path, the 8 factors can also be described as 3 things. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Moral conduct, concentration and wisdom. So the Sila part consists of 3 factors. Right speech, right action and right livelihood. Right speech consists of 4 precepts. Not to lie, not to engage in malicious speech, speech motivated by anger. Number 3, not to speak coarse, vulgar words. And number 4, not to engage in idle gossip. So right speech has 4 precepts. And then right action has 3 precepts. Not to kill, not to take what is not given, and not to engage in sexual misconduct. And then right livelihood is earning your livelihood in a way that does not harm others. And that means you uphold the first two factors, right speech and right action. So right livelihood in a way is covered by right speech and right action. So actually there are only 7 precepts in the Arin Sila, comprising right speech and right action. And you can see right livelihood also, 7 precepts. And what is the noble method that he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom? Here, householder, the noble disciple attends closely and carefully to dependent origination itself thus. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. That is, with ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, mentality, materiality, etc., etc. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes cessation of volition. With the cessation of volition cessation of consciousness, etc., etc. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This is the noble method that he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom. When householder, these 5 fearful animosities have subsided in a noble disciple, and he possesses these 4 factors of stream entry, and he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom the noble method. If he wishes, he could by himself declare of himself, I am one finished with hell, finished with the animal realm, finished with the domain of ghosts, finished with the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the nether world. I am a stream enterer, no longer bound to the nether world, fixed in destiny, with enlightenment as my destination. That's the end of the sutta. So here, you see, if we want to become a stream enterer, an Arya, so that we are no more going to be reborn in the woeful planes of existence. And 3 things here are important. 1, you have to keep the 5 precepts, or as I mentioned just now, the 7 precepts. And then the second is you have the 4 factors of stream entry. That means you have unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, and you have the Aryan Sila. And the third one is you know this noble method, the Aryan method, that means dependent origination. You can see that suffering is dependently originated. 12.43 at Savatthi. Monks, I will teach you the origin and the passing away of suffering. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. The Blessed One said, at what, monks, is the origin of suffering? In dependence on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the tree is contact. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving. This is the origin of suffering. Independence on ear and sounds, independence on nose and odors, independence on tongue and taste, independence on the body and tactile objects. Similarly, this consciousness arises, and then the meeting of the tree, namely the sense organ, the sense object, and the sense consciousness is contact, and with contact as condition, feeling arises. With feeling as condition, craving. This is the origin of suffering. Stop here for a moment. So here you see, for this, any one of the 6 consciousness to arise, there has to be this condition that the sense organ must be there. For example, for your eye consciousness to arise, you must have a good eye, and then there is form for the in front of the eye. So with these 2 as condition, eye consciousness arises. But if we think carefully, this is not the only 2 conditions, because there has got to be other conditions like volition. Volition, the will to live, then consciousness can prolong, because independent origination, consciousness arises dependent on sankhara, dependent on volition, right? So this is another 2 conditions. For eye consciousness to arise, you've got to have eye and forms. So once you have eye and forms, say like something comes before your eye, the eye consciousness arises, and then the meeting of the tree, that means the contact of the tree will start the mind working. Feeling arises. Feeling is the first thing. And then after feeling, you have perception. After feeling, you have perception. Then after that, you may have thinking. Then after that, you may have intention, intending to do something. Maybe you see something attractive, then you have this perception, and then you intend to obtain it or something. So this starts the mind working. So, but once you have feeling, then if it's a pleasant feeling, then craving arises. Once you have craving, then this dependent origination goes. Craving leads to clinging or attachment, which leads to being, which leads to birth and suffering. So that's the origin of suffering. And what mounts is the passing away of suffering. Independence on the I and forms. I consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving comes cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of existence or being. With the cessation of being, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This is the passing away of suffering. Similarly, independence on the ear and sounds and on the mind and mental objects. This consciousness arises, and the meeting of the three is contact, and with contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving comes cessation of clinging, and then leads to cessation of being, cessation of birth, etc. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So here, this sequence, you can consider it. That means if you have the six sense bases, and then the six sense objects comes before your six sense bases, then the consciousness arises, and then there is contact, and then feeling comes about. So this you can consider as this present life, this present life. And then if you crave because of feeling, you have craving, and that leads to attachment and being and birth. So birth refers to the next life, birth and aging and dying and all that. So here you're talking about two lifetimes, present lifetime and the future lifetime. So it says, if you want to stop that suffering, this you have to, with the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving comes cessation of clinging. So you have to stop the chain that leads to suffering at craving. If you stop your craving for all the things in the world, which also means you have to let go. You have to let go of your attachments, your clinging. And then slowly that leads to the cessation of being. And then that will lead to the cessation of birth or rebirth. So it's important to note that this has to come about with the cessation of craving. But for you to cut craving, you have to know enough Dhamma, have to practice enough Dhamma so that you reduce your ignorance. With strong ignorance, you cannot stop this suffering.